The alien planet of Violia stretched endlessly under a sky that shimmered with swirling purple clouds and distant, glowing moons. Cities of crystal towers rose like jagged mountains, their surfaces reflecting the strange light in a way that made the world seem alive. From high above, the planet looked peaceful, almost serene. But beneath the glittering surface, political intrigue and the quiet tension of centuries-old traditions ran like currents beneath a calm river. At the center of this world sat the palace of the queen. It was a structure of elegance and perfection, every detail designed to show power, grace, and control. The corridors were wide and filled with a soft hum from the energy fields embedded in the walls. Servants moved silently, anticipating the queen's every need, their eyes always alert. And in the heart of this palace, Queen Lysera observed everything. Lysera had ruled Violia for decades. Her species was old, wise, and proud. They had conquered many worlds, absorbed countless cultures, and grown confident in their superiority. She herself was a figure of unmatched elegance. Her skin shimmered faintly in the light, her eyes deep pools of knowledge and calculation, and her presence alone could silence a room. She had seen many humans before, for her empire had begun trading with Earth centuries ago. Most had been curious, obedient, and easily impressed by her technology. They treated her like a goddess, as if their entire existence depended on her favor. Lysera, however, had grown bored of such human behavior. She wanted more than admiration. She wanted challenge, something that would make her think, something that could perhaps surprise her. That was why she had summoned a human who was different, a human whose reputation had already begun to echo through interstellar channels. His name was Elias Harper. Elias arrived on Violia aboard a sleek human transport ship. Unlike most humans who had come before him, he did not wear the wide-eyed expression of awe when he entered the grand palace. His shoulders were straight, his eyes calm, and his steps measured. He did not flinch at the floating platforms, the delicate balance of anti-gravity elevators, or the shimmering crystal walls. He did not even seem particularly impressed by the presence of the queen herself. Lysera watched from her throne, intrigued. Most humans would have bowed deeply, lowered their gaze, and fumbled their words. Elias, however, approached her with quiet confidence. He spoke clearly, without hesitation. "Your Highness, thank you for granting me an audience. I come with respect and an open mind." Instead, she found a strange calm that seemed almost alien. "Sit," she commanded, her voice melodic yet commanding. "Tell me why I should welcome a human into my court. Convince me that your presence here is not merely a curiosity. Humanity has much to offer, and we wish to learn from your people as well. I do not seek admiration. I seek understanding and collaboration." Elias seemed to observe everything, noting patterns and inconsistencies with subtle precision. He was listening not just with his ears but with his mind. "Very well," Lysera said, her voice calm but deliberate. "You shall remain in my court. You will be my personal liaison between Violia and Earth. Observe, learn, and advise. You will follow my rules, and in return, I will grant you access to knowledge that no human has ever known." Yet beneath this perfection, he sensed rigidity. Decisions were slow because no one wished to make a mistake. Creativity was discouraged because it often disrupted the balance. He smiled faintly, realizing that this was a world ready for a new perspective, one that humans, with their ingenuity and unpredictability, could provide. Days passed, and Elias began his work in the court. He observed alien ceremonies and protocols, learning quickly how to navigate the delicate politics of Violia. The queen watched him closely, noting every decision, every subtle interaction. Elias did not try to impress her with displays of strength or knowledge. Instead, he listened, asked questions, and made small suggestions that slowly began to shift how her court approached problems. One evening, as they walked through the palace gardens, an extraordinary expanse of glowing flora and gently moving water streams, Lysera spoke. "You are unlike any human I have met," she said. You do not tremble before us. You do not fawn. And yet you are not arrogant. Tell me, what makes your kind so bold? Our strength is not just in what we know, but in what we can discover and create. We do not always follow the rules, but we learn from them. We take risks, and sometimes that is the key to survival. And here was a human who was a puzzle, one whose unpredictability might challenge her understanding of power. It was then that the first signs of trouble appeared. Reports came from the outer colonies, faraway sectors of Virelia's empire that had grown restless. A rogue faction had begun attacking transport routes, sabotaging technology, and spreading chaos. Lysera's advisors were quick to panic, their faces pale with fear at the thought of a challenge to their control. Elias observed quietly, noting the hesitation and indecision of the Queen's counselors. "Your Highness," he said carefully, "may I suggest a different approach? Instead of sending large fleets to respond blindly, we could analyze their patterns, predict their moves, and strike strategically. It may prevent unnecessary conflict." She decided to allow him to act. In the following days, Elias began quietly implementing small changes. He reorganized patrol routes, suggested unconventional surveillance methods, and introduced strategies based on human logic rather than alien tradition. Slowly, the rogue attacks were mitigated, and her court began to notice the effectiveness of his ideas. Lysera herself was amazed. For centuries, her species had believed in rigid order as the key to stability. Yet here was a human, using ingenuity and observation to achieve results without brute force or authority. Each successful suggestion built his credibility and quietly challenged her assumptions about human weakness. One evening, Lysera invited Elias to the throne room after the day's council had adjourned. The soft light of the alien moons reflected across her crystalline chamber, casting long shadows. "You are proving to be more capable than I expected," she said, her voice soft but firm. "Most humans crumble under pressure or demand reward for simple accomplishments. You do neither. Why?" "I serve because it is necessary. Challenges are meant to be solved, and obstacles exist to teach us something new. Humanity has survived not by power alone, but by solving problems and adapting." Instead, she had found someone who could think, act, and inspire in ways she had never imagined. In that moment, she realized that her decision to select Elias had been far more consequential than she could have anticipated. As the days passed, Elias continued to observe, learn, and influence. The palace became a place where subtle change was brewing. Courtiers whispered about the human who did not fear or tremble, who could outthink even the most experienced alien advisors. And in the quiet of her private chambers, Lysera found herself staring at him with something that bordered on awe, a recognition that humans, despite their outward fragility, possessed potential that could rival even the oldest civilizations in the galaxy. The first part of Elia's story on Virelia had begun. He had arrived as a visitor, expected to be a curiosity. But even now, before the true tests had begun, he was quietly showing the alien queen and her court that humans were unpredictable, resourceful, and far stronger than anyone had imagined. The stage was set, the chessboard arranged, and the first moves of an extraordinary journey had already begun. The days following Elias Harper's arrival in the palace passed with a quiet intensity. While the grand halls of Virelia gleamed under the alien light, a storm was brewing beyond the city, far from the Queen's eyes. The rogue faction that had begun sabotaging transport routes and communication networks was growing bolder. They had no interest in negotiation. Their goal was domination, and their methods were brutal if calculated. Inside the palace, Lysera watched her advisors pace nervously. The court had always prized precision, obedience, and long-term planning, but this crisis demanded rapid decisions. Many advisors suggested overwhelming force, fleets of ships to bombard suspected rebel bases. Others argued for strict economic sanctions or cutting off supplies to the outer colonies. The Queen listened silently, her mind sharp and observant. She noticed how fear had begun to cloud their judgment. Decisions were slow, weighed down by the caution of centuries. Elias, meanwhile, moved differently. He did not rush. He did not panic. He observed patterns, timelines, and the small, telling mistakes of the rogue faction. While others focused on their fear, he focused on logic. He studied intercepted communications, scanned logistical data, and charted the movement of enemy vessels. Unlike the aliens whose technology was advanced but rigidly applied, Elias saw opportunities for unconventional strategies. During a council meeting, he spoke calmly. "Your Highness, if we respond the way your advisors suggest, we risk predictable outcomes. The rogue faction is fast and resourceful. They will anticipate standard tactics. I propose a different approach. We can divide their attention, create diversions, and use their overconfidence against them. In short, we fight smart rather than with sheer force." Elias leaned over the display table, his fingers tracing patterns in the holographic projection of the rogue fleet's movements. "They are organized, yes, but they rely on strict routines. We can predict where they will strike next. We can use minimal resources to create false signals, making them waste energy and ships. At the same time, I suggest using our transport networks differently, moving essential goods through unexpected channels. It is unconventional, but humans are experienced at adapting when the rules are unclear. But inaction or predictability guarantees failure. Calculated risk can save more than brute force ever could." She realized that while humans might appear fragile or unassuming, Elias possessed a kind of strength that did not come from muscle or authority. It came from intelligence, creativity, and observation. Over the next several days, Elias began quietly implementing his strategies. He coordinated small teams of Virelian analysts to monitor communications, intercepting coded messages from the rogue faction. He suggested creating decoy transports and false supply routes to mislead the rebels. He even trained a group of alien scouts in unconventional tactics, teaching them to think creatively rather than rely solely on protocol. The results were immediate. Rebel attacks became disorganized. Supply lines they thought were vulnerable were empty. Strategic resources were moved safely, and morale among the Queen's forces improved. Aliens who had been skeptical of Elias' methods began to see his brilliance. Even in subtle ways, he was reshaping the court's understanding of strategy and leadership. One evening, as Elias returned from coordinating operations at a forward station, Lysera intercepted him in the palace gardens. The soft light of the moons glimmered on the crystalline pathways, and the gentle hum of energy fields filled the air. "You are proving unexpectedly effective," she said. "The court is beginning to rely on your judgment. Some might even say they trust you more than our own advisors." He was not ambitious in the traditional sense, yet his actions had impact far beyond what anyone had anticipated. She felt a mixture of admiration and unease. This human was showing her a perspective she had never fully considered. That raw intellect and moral clarity could rival centuries of experience and tradition. Meanwhile, the rogue faction grew more aggressive. They had noticed that their attacks were failing and suspected the presence of a new strategist among the Queen's ranks. They were clever, but their assumptions about alien rigidity blinded them to human ingenuity. Elias anticipated their moves, creating traps that required them to expend resources unnecessarily. He also suggested using the planet's unique environment to the defenders' advantage. The twisting canyons, glowing forests, and floating crystal spires became more than just scenic. They were strategic assets. One night, reports came that the rogue faction was concentrating a fleet near a critical transport hub. The advisors panicked, urging immediate deployment of the main fleet. Elias shook his head. "If we respond directly, they will retreat and regroup. Instead, we send a small, mobile force to intercept their forward scouts while simultaneously creating false signals elsewhere. They will believe the hub is vulnerable and overextend themselves. Then we can neutralize them without risking the main fleet. Most visitors were cautious, timid, or overly reliant on the Queen's technology. Elias relied on observation, reasoning, and adaptation. That was his strength. The plan was set into motion. Under Elias' guidance, small groups moved swiftly through Virelia's forests and crystal valleys, deploying decoys and intercepting enemy scouts. The rogue faction reacted predictably, drawn into the traps. Within hours, the main fleet's arrival was unnecessary. The rebels had exhausted their forces, and their leadership was thrown into disarray. When the Queen received the report, she felt a rare emotion, surprise tinged with respect. Humans, she realized, did not follow the same rules as her people. Their unpredictability was a power in itself. The alien court began to murmur, questioning their own assumptions about leadership and strength. Elias, meanwhile, continued to observe quietly. He did not seek accolades or recognition. He merely worked to solve the problems in front of him, applying human logic in ways that confounded the aliens. He taught them that strategy was not just about orders and authority. It was about understanding behavior, anticipating reactions, and using creativity to outthink an opponent. By the end of the week, the rogue faction had retreated, frustrated and defeated. Their attacks had failed, not because of overwhelming force, but because of careful observation, strategic planning, and adaptability, qualities the alien empire had underestimated in humans. Lysera summoned Elias to the throne room once again. She observed him as he approached, noting the quiet confidence in his stride and the calm clarity in his eyes. "You have changed the course of this conflict without commanding fleets or issuing decrees," she said. "Your methods are unorthodox, yet effective. I admit, I did not expect such results from a human." Predictable power can fail when the rules change. Flexibility and observation can overcome even the greatest challenges. They were clever, resourceful, and capable of influencing even the most sophisticated societies. The Queen realized that she was witnessing something extraordinary. Elias Harper was not merely a human visitor or a diplomatic tool. He was a force of intellect and ingenuity, a representative of humanity's greatest qualities. His ability to anticipate, adapt, and inspire had turned what could have been a disaster into a decisive victory. As they stood in the glow of the alien moons, Lysera could not hide her admiration. "You are remarkable," she said softly. "I have underestimated your species. You are not weak. You are not predictable. You are something I have never fully understood until now." She realized that the coming days would be different. Elias had begun to reshape not only her understanding of humans, but also the very way she approached leadership, strategy, and power. And for the first time, she felt a sense of excitement, the thrill of witnessing a human capable of challenging centuries of alien convention. The palace was quiet once more, the crisis temporarily averted. But beneath the surface, change had begun. Humans, once underestimated, had begun to prove that their ingenuity, courage, and adaptability could rival even the most advanced civilizations. And at the center of it all, Elias Harper moved quietly, observing, learning, and reshaping the course of Virelia's future, one calculated, brilliant step at a time. The rogue faction's retreat had brought a temporary calm to Virelia, but the sense of unease in the palace remained. For Queen Lysera, victory had come not from overwhelming force, but from the cleverness of a human she had once thought fragile and amusing. Elias Harper had proven his worth in ways that challenged centuries of alien experience, and the Queen could not ignore the stir of admiration and a touch of apprehension that his presence created. Elias himself did not seek attention. He moved quietly through the palace corridors, observing, noting, and refining strategies for maintaining security and stability. His calm manner contrasted sharply with the alien court, where advisors still whispered about what they called the human anomaly. Some were impressed, others wary, and a few openly resentful. But Elias ignored them. He focused on understanding the bigger picture, the balance of power, the strengths and weaknesses of both allies and adversaries, and the unpredictable nature of life itself. One morning, the palace received a new report. Sensors had detected unusual energy readings near the outer colonies, in regions the rogue faction had previously avoided. The readings were unlike anything the Virelians had encountered before: fluctuating gravitational fields, unpredictable energy surges, and anomalous particle distortions. The court advisors panicked. "It could be another attack," one said, "or a new weapon we do not understand. We must send in our fleets immediately." She had learned to trust her own instincts, but even she could not predict what these readings meant. She turned to Elias. "What do you make of this, human? Can you understand it?" "It is not technology the Virelians normally use. I would need to observe it directly to understand its full potential." Sending a human into an unknown zone was dangerous. Yet she also recognized that Elias had already proven his intelligence, judgment, and adaptability in ways that no other advisor could match. She nodded slowly. "Very well. You may go, but you will have a small escort, nothing more. I want results, not disaster." He reviewed the data, selected a team of Virelian analysts, and studied the environment he would encounter. He did not boast or make demands. He simply prepared, thinking several steps ahead, anticipating challenges and calculating risks. The journey to the outer colonies was tense. The landscapes shifted from crystalline cities to jagged, rocky terrains and glowing, alien forests. The energy anomalies grew stronger as they approached the source. Sensors fluctuated wildly, and even the experienced Virelian escort seemed unsettled. Yet Elias remained calm. He observed patterns in the fluctuations, noting when they intensified and when they waned. His human intuition guided him in ways the Virelians could not fully understand. Finally, they reached the epicenter of the energy disturbances. Before them lay a strange phenomenon, a shimmering, almost invisible sphere that distorted space itself. Light bent unnaturally around it, and the air seemed charged with energy. The Virelian analysts hesitated, unsure how to proceed. Elias stepped forward. He studied the sphere carefully, noticing subtle patterns in the distortion. "This is not a natural occurrence," he said. "It is being controlled, and its effects are deliberate. I believe it can be neutralized, but it requires understanding its mechanics from within the field itself. I will not act recklessly." Light bent around him, and the air seemed to pull and twist, but he moved steadily, maintaining control. The Virelians watched in stunned silence. What they saw was extraordinary. Where they expected a human to falter, Elias moved with precision, adapting to the unpredictable distortions. He adjusted the device's output, stabilizing pockets of the field long enough to analyze its structure. Then, with careful calibration, he began reversing the flow of energy, neutralizing the distortions one by one. Lysera, monitoring remotely from the palace, felt her breath catch. She had seen advanced technology before, but never like this. The human was not only surviving in conditions that defied comprehension, he was mastering them. With each adjustment, the sphere's distortions weakened, until finally it collapsed in a controlled implosion, leaving behind calm energy readings. When Elias stepped out of the field, the escort rushed forward, astonished. "Human, that was impossible," one exclaimed. Elias smiled faintly, calm as ever. "It was not impossible. It required observation, calculation, and adaptation. Humans survive by learning quickly and using what we know in creative ways. This is no different." Even Queen Lysera found herself staring at him with a new understanding. The human she had chosen was not just clever. He possessed a unique capability to solve problems in ways the oldest and most advanced species could not. The queen called him to her private chambers. The soft glow of the moons illuminated the crystalline walls as she regarded him with an intensity she rarely showed. You survived and controlled the sphere. I do not fully understand how. Your people, they are underestimated at every turn, and yet you possess abilities that challenge even my comprehension. We rely on observation, reasoning, and creativity. That is why we endure. He had revealed a truth about his species. Humans were unpredictable, adaptable, and capable of surprising even the oldest civilizations. Over the following days, Elias continued to demonstrate his capabilities in smaller, but no less impressive ways. He analyzed vulnerabilities in rogue networks, suggested modifications to defensive systems, and trained select Virelian officers in thinking creatively rather than relying strictly on protocol. Every action further solidified his reputation as someone extraordinary. Even the queen could not ignore the change in her court. Where once humans were treated as curiosities, now there was recognition of their potential. And it was not just Elias who had revealed this. He had shown what humans could achieve when given trust, observation, and opportunity. Late one evening, as Elias returned to his quarters, Lysera followed him. The corridors were quiet, the usual hum of the palace energy fields providing a soft backdrop. "Human," she began, her voice unusually soft, "you have revealed something I did not expect. I see now that humans are not merely fragile or amusing. They possess power, not in the way my people measure it, but in ways that matter. Intelligence, adaptability, courage, these are forms of strength. That is all humanity asks for, a chance to demonstrate what we can do. We survive, we adapt, and we find solutions. That is our nature." The human had not just solved problems. He had reshaped the way she thought about leadership, strategy, and potential. As she left him, Lysera felt a rare emotion, a mixture of awe, respect, and cautious excitement. This human had revealed power in ways she could not have imagined, and she knew that the challenges ahead would be different because of him. Humanity, she realized, was not to be underestimated. Elias, alone in his quarters, reviewed the events quietly. He did not boast, did not celebrate. He understood that his mission was ongoing. There would be more challenges, more threats, and the stakes would only grow higher. But he was ready. He knew that humans survived and thrived because they faced uncertainty with courage, reason, and creativity. And that understanding would guide him in the days to come, as the rogue faction regrouped, and as new, unforeseen threats loomed on the horizon. The first revelation was complete. The human had shown his true capability, not through aggression or brute strength, but through intellect, observation, and courage. Queen Lysera stared in awe, and the court began to recognize that humanity was far more powerful than they had ever imagined. The stage was set for even greater trials, and Elias Harper was prepared to meet them, guided by the quiet strength of human ingenuity. The rogue faction, having suffered setbacks at the hands of Elias Harper, was far from defeated. Their retreat had been tactical, not an admission of weakness. Across the outer colonies, whispers spread of the human who had disrupted their carefully laid plans with intelligence and creativity rather than overwhelming force. Rumors of his abilities reached even the highest ranks of their command, and the rogue leaders grew cautious, yet determined. They knew that if they were to claim power over Virelia, Elias had to be removed. Back in the palace, Queen Lysera convened an emergency council. The moonlight filtered through the crystalline walls, casting long shadows that danced across the chamber. The queen's face was calm, but her eyes betrayed the weight of responsibility she felt. "The rogue faction is preparing a decisive strike," she said. "They have underestimated us before, but now they will come with their full strength. We must be ready." She had witnessed his calm intellect, his ability to solve problems under impossible conditions. She turned to him. "Human, I need your counsel. How should we approach this confrontation?" "Your Highness," he said, "if we meet them head-on with brute force, we risk unnecessary losses. Their numbers are significant, but they rely on predictable strategies. I suggest we divide their attention, using smaller, mobile teams to exploit weaknesses while our main forces remain protected. We can control the battlefield without risking the palace or civilian populations. We can turn their aggression into their weakness. Elias coordinated the deployment of small strike teams, trained in unconventional tactics, to key points across the outer colonies. He worked with Virelian engineers to modify defense grids, creating zones that could funnel enemy ships into controlled areas. He instructed analysts to feed false intelligence to the rogue faction, luring them into traps. Every detail mattered and every move was carefully calculated. When the enemy fleet arrived, it was massive, imposing, and well-armed. They expected a straightforward battle, relying on sheer firepower to overwhelm the defenders. Instead, they encountered confusion. Ships were intercepted in unexpected locations, ambushed by units they had not anticipated. Supply lines were disrupted and communications faltered. The rogue commanders were forced to adapt on the fly, a challenge they had not prepared for. From the palace observation deck, Lysera watched Elias at work. He was calm, directing multiple teams simultaneously, responding to unexpected developments with precision. His human ingenuity was on full display. Where the aliens relied on rigid commands and protocol, Elias improvised, using the terrain, energy flows, and even the psychology of the enemy to his advantage. Hours passed, and the tide of battle began to turn. Rogue ships were misdirected, isolated, and neutralized with minimal losses on the Virelian side. The rogue faction struggled to regroup, frustrated and confused by strategies they could not predict. Elias had not only countered their aggression, but had forced them to fight on his terms. Suddenly, a high-ranking rogue commander attempted a direct strike at the palace itself, hoping to demoralize the defenders by targeting Lysera. Alarms blared as their ship approached the outer shield. The advisors panicked, urging immediate retaliation with the main fleet, but Elias remained calm. He analyzed the trajectory, identified a weak point in the rogue vessel's approach, and deployed a small, specialized team to intercept it. Within moments, the rogue ship was neutralized. The palace shields remained intact, and the attackers were forced into retreat. The advisors, who had doubted him at every turn, could not hide their astonishment. The human had anticipated the threat, acted decisively, and neutralized it without endangering the main forces. Lysera felt a sense of awe that she rarely experienced. Elias Harper was not just clever, he was extraordinary. He had demonstrated not only intelligence, but courage, leadership, and the ability to inspire others to act in ways they had never thought possible. The Queen realized that humans, in their unpredictability, possessed a type of power that her empire had never fully understood. As the battle drew to a close, Elias gathered the strike teams and conducted a final sweep to ensure no hidden threats remained. He moved with efficiency and purpose, calm in the face of danger. When the operation ended, he returned to the palace, greeted by advisors and officers who now looked at him with genuine respect rather than skepticism. Lysera met him in the throne room, her eyes reflecting the light of the moons outside. "You have done what none of my advisors could," she said quietly. "You have protected this palace, our people, and our colonies without resorting to the overwhelming force they expected. You have done it with intelligence, strategy, and courage. I am in awe of your abilities. I am grateful for your trust, Your Highness. Humans survive and succeed because we adapt, observe, and act decisively. Brute force is only one approach. There are others, sometimes more effective and less destructive." Elias had shown her that strength was not only measured in ships, weapons, or technology, but in the mind, in creativity, and in the willingness to act when others hesitated. Over the following days, the court began to change. Advisors who had once scoffed at Elias' unconventional methods now sought his counsel. Officers trained under his guidance became more innovative and confident. Even the Queen herself found that she was beginning to think differently about leadership and strategy. Humanity, she realized, had qualities that could complement and even challenge the traditions of the oldest civilizations. One evening, As the palace settled into a rare quiet, Lysera invited Elias to walk with her through the gardens. The soft light of the moons reflected on the crystal paths, and the gentle hum of the energy fields created a serene atmosphere. "You have changed much in a short time," she said. "Not just in the outcome of the battles, but in how we think, how we act, and how we value intelligence. You have made me reconsider what it means to be powerful. Your Highness, power is not always about control or fear. Sometimes it is about understanding, adaptability, and the courage to make difficult decisions. Humans survive because we embrace uncertainty and act with reason and purpose." She realized that the rogue faction had underestimated humanity, but she also recognized that her own people had been limited by tradition and rigidity. Elias had shown that intelligence, ingenuity, and courage could level the playing field, even against seemingly insurmountable odds. The queen and the human walked in silence for a while, both reflecting on the events that had unfolded. She felt a mix of admiration, respect, and cautious excitement. Elias Harper had not only defended her empire, he had revealed something far greater: the potential of humans, the kind of power that came from intellect, adaptability, and moral clarity. In the weeks that followed, the rogue faction retreated entirely, unable to regroup under the shadow of Elias' strategies. The colonies stabilized, trade resumed, and the court regained confidence. But Lysera knew that this was only the beginning. Challenges would continue to arise, and the unpredictable nature of the universe meant that new threats could appear at any moment. And yet, with Elias Harper by her side, she felt a sense of assurance she had never known. The human had shown her that strength was not measured only in weapons or fleets, but in the mind, in courage, and in the ability to inspire others to rise above fear and uncertainty. Humanity, she realized, was not a fragile species to be underestimated. It was a force capable of shaping the course of entire civilizations. The Palace of Violia had survived the greatest challenge it had faced in centuries, not because of superior numbers or technology, but because of the brilliance of a human who refused to accept limitations. Elias had not only defended the empire, but had shown what humans could achieve when given trust, observation, and opportunity. The stage was set for the final revelations and the ultimate acknowledgement of human power, intelligence, and resilience. The outer colonies were finally quiet. The rogue faction had been defeated, their forces scattered, and their ambitions brought to ruin. Yet within the Palace of Violia, Queen Lysera knew that the true test was not only survival, it was understanding the full scope of what the human she had chosen was capable of. Elias Harper had already demonstrated intelligence, courage, and ingenuity beyond anything her advisors could match, but she sensed there was more to him than anyone realized. Elias, however, remained focused. He did not revel in victory or seek recognition. His mind was already on the next challenge, scanning reports from the colonies, analyzing potential weak points in defenses, and considering improvements that would protect both civilians and military forces. He moved with calm purpose, each decision precise and thoughtful. To the Violians, his composure in the face of uncertainty seemed almost superhuman. One morning, sensors detected a new anomaly near the border of Violia's controlled space. This was not the chaotic energy distortions of the rogue faction, but a deliberate, massive energy surge directed toward the core colonies. It was unlike anything the Empire had faced, a concentrated force that could destroy entire installations if left unchecked. Lysera convened the council immediately, her face calm but her eyes sharp. "This is no ordinary attack," one advisor said nervously. "It is targeted, precise, and overwhelming. We must mobilize the main fleet and destroy it before it reaches the colonies. What is needed is not a fleet to meet force with force, but a precise intervention at the critical points of the energy chain. We can neutralize the energy without risking unnecessary lives. But know that the Empire itself is counting on your success. The anomaly pulsed with immense power, warping space and threatening to collapse under its own energy. The Virelians could only watch in awe as Elias approached the center. He activated a human-designed device he had created for manipulating gravitational fields. It was compact yet sophisticated, capable of interacting with forces far beyond what the aliens had thought possible. Slowly, carefully, he adjusted the output, countering the energy pulses in real time. The anomaly reacted, its power fluctuating wildly, but Elias remained calm. He adapted his approach continuously, never relying on a single method or solution. The palace monitored his progress through real-time feeds. Lysera could hardly believe her eyes. Where the Virelians would have faltered, lost in calculations and rigid procedures, Elias moved with intuition, precision, and creativity. Every adjustment he made brought stability, and slowly, the anomaly's destructive force began to diminish. Hours passed, and the tension was unbearable. The anomaly pulsed violently, threatening to overwhelm their instruments. Yet Elias persisted. He coordinated the small team flawlessly, assigning tasks, predicting outcomes, and adapting in ways no one had expected. The humans' creativity, combined with their ability to act decisively under pressure, turned the tide. Finally, with one precise adjustment, Elias neutralized the anomaly. It collapsed inward, its energy dispersed safely into the surrounding space. The colonies were saved. The team returned to Virlia as heroes, but Elias himself remained calm, analyzing final reports and ensuring no residual dangers remained. Back at the palace, Lysera met him in her private chambers. Her usual composure was softened by a rare, profound awe. "Human," she said quietly, "you have done what no Virelian could. You faced a force we could not even fully comprehend and turned it to our advantage. I have never seen anything like this. That is our power." Over the following days, the palace adjusted to the new reality. Advisors sought Elia's counsel, officers trained under his guidance became more confident and innovative, and even the queen herself found that her thinking had shifted. Humanity, she realized, was not fragile or inferior. It was capable, resilient, and able to inspire change in even the oldest and most advanced civilizations. Lysera invited Elias to walk with her through the palace gardens one evening. The moons reflected in the crystalline paths, and the soft hum of energy fields filled the air. "You have shown me the true potential of humans," she said. "Not just your intelligence, but your courage, your adaptability, and your willingness to act when others hesitate. You have reshaped my understanding of strength itself. That is what makes us strong." With Elias Harper as an ally, humanity and Virlia could form a partnership unlike any the galaxy had seen. His influence had already reshaped the court, inspired officers, and protected entire colonies. His ingenuity and courage had revealed the potential of his species in ways that no Virelian could have imagined. In the weeks that followed, Virlia began a new era. Trade with human worlds expanded, technology was shared and adapted, and the colonies flourished under a combination of human ingenuity and alien precision. Elias continued to serve as liaison, strategist, and mentor, quietly shaping policies and decisions with intelligence and foresight. The court, once rigid and cautious, had learned to value creativity and adaptability, qualities the human had brought into their midst. The rogue faction never fully recovered, disbanding in the face of coordinated human and alien strategies. Other civilizations began to hear of the human who had neutralized impossible threats, inspired a court, and reshaped the strategy of an ancient empire. Stories of his accomplishments spread quietly, planting the seeds of respect and admiration for humanity across distant stars. One evening, as Elias returned from a routine inspection of outer colonies, Lysera met him on the palace terrace. The moons glimmered overhead, casting a serene light on the crystal structures around them. She regarded him with the same awe she had felt the first time he revealed his capabilities, now deepened by months of extraordinary service. "You have done more than I imagined," she said softly. "You have shown that humans are not only capable of surviving, but capable of shaping the future of civilizations. You have earned not just my respect, but the admiration of this entire empire. That is our strength." Elias Harper had revealed the potential of humanity in ways that no one, including herself, could have foreseen. As the palace settled into a calm night, Lysera watched Elias walk back to his quarters. She felt a rare sense of wonder, tempered by admiration. Humanity was no longer merely a curiosity in her eyes. It was a force of intelligence, courage, and resilience. And at the center of it, Elias Harper stood as living proof of everything his species could achieve. In that moment, the Queen understood a truth that would shape Virelia's future. Humans, underestimated for centuries, were capable of greatness beyond imagination. And Elias Harper had not only revealed that potential, he had inspired it, protected it, and earned a place of lasting respect and awe among the stars. The story of the human and the alien queen had reached its climax, but its impact would echo across galaxies for generations. Through intellect, courage, and adaptability, humanity had shown the galaxy that it was not to be underestimated, and that its power lay not in conquest, but in ingenuity, heart, and the unyielding will to rise to any challenge. Queen Lysera stared into the night sky, her thoughts on the human who had changed her understanding forever. She felt awe, respect, and the quiet certainty that the future would be different because of him. Elias Harper had proven that humans were not just survivors. They were architects of their own destiny, capable of shaping the course of civilizations, inspiring allies, and transforming entire worlds with nothing but their minds, courage, and resolve. And with that, the empire of Virelia entered a new era, guided by the brilliance of a human who had revealed the true potential of his species, and the galaxy would never be the same again.